Hello, how are you? I hope you're well. So I actually wrote part of this script a long time ago. Didn't get around to making this video for a couple reasons, and then by the time I felt like I could make this video, it felt weird. By the way, I have more videos about past seasons that I'm gonna release at some point, so I don't know why I was so hung up on relevancy, but anyway. But the Riverdale overlords hath bringeth science lower than ever before, first with their spontaneous combustion plot, and then we see it far in the distance, resurfacing of the maoa and Cdh13 serial killer genes. First things first, I'm not a scientist, nor am I even a sciencey person, and I'm kind of dumb, but I did do a lot of research on the subject. All my sources will be linked below. I tried to stick to scholarly articles, but I am but a measly, stupid human who took up to biology in high school, so some of these are like more tabloidy articles that say something that I fact-checked with a science article, if that makes sense. I basically read it in simple English, checked it to the best of my abilities in difficult science English. One last thing, in case you're wondering, my reason for making this video is because I literally cannot think about it without wanting to scream. So here we go. So what are the serial killer genes, or the warrior genes as they're better known as? Well, according to Riverdale, they are the maoa and Cdh13 genes.
I can confirm that you do have the maoa and Cdh13 genes.
This is already incorrect. We all have the maoa and Cdh13 genes. Everyone has them. What the serial killer or warrior genes are variants of the maoa and Cdh13 genes. So in the shortest and simplest way I can put it, because that's the only way I'll understand it, let's look at what the maoa gene is. The maoa gene is found on X chromosomes and has instructions for creating an enzyme called monoamine oxidase A, which breaks down molecules called monoamines. Among the monoamines are chemicals that act as neurotransmitters, such as epinephrine and norepinephrine, serotonin, and dopamine. They are broken down when they aren't needed anymore. So what do these do? Epinephrine and norepinephrine are involved in the fight or flight and nervous system. The serotonin system is involved in impulse control, happiness, sleep, etc. Dopamine is involved in mood, motivation, reward, etc. So violence from this maoa, from what I've read, is from a low-activity genotype. The violence is from a mutation of this gene. This means that the neurotransmitters are not being broken down as much as they should. So basically, this variant is being lazy and not breaking down the neurotransmitters enough, which is causing all of these things like impulse control and mood to be out of whack. That's the most sciencey way I can put it. In the early 1990s, researchers linked low levels of maoa with increased frequencies of antisocial behavior when individuals had been abused or mistreated during childhood. In 2008, 2,500 American boys from grades 7 to 12 who showed severe aggression behavior at school were investigated. A variant of the maoa gene, VNTR2R MAOA, you don't have to remember that, don't worry, was shown as a risk factor for violence, but only when there were other stressors involved. Stressors included but are not limited to abuse, family issues, and failing school. More studies show that when someone had an abusive childhood and a low-activity maoa genotype, they are at a greater risk for developing antisocial personality disorder. Now, one hugely important thing for later, the maoa gene variant that is linked to men being more aggressive and antisocial actually could make women happier, if it even affects them at all. This is a disorder of the X, or a mutation of the X chromosome, which women have another, so they're fine, but men do not. They only have one X chromosome, which is why it affects them disproportionately. Now, a bit about the Cdh13 gene. A Finnish study of 900 criminals found that a specific mutation of the Cdh13 gene was associated with more aggressive behavior, while non-violent offenders did not have the maoa or Cdh13 mutations. Obviously, this doesn't mean that violence can be predicted by a couple of gene mutations, but it can make people more prone to aggression. The Cdh13 gene is actually a risk gene for ADHD and various comorbid neurodevelopmental and psych disorders like depression, substance abuse, autism, and violent behavior. I want to make it really clear here, just because you have this gene or the other gene mutation does not inherently mean you are going to be violent. The Cdh13 gene is where my non-sciencey brain really held me back, but one thing is that the maoa deficiency, where neurotransmitters are not being broken down enough when their job is done, can cause dopamine hyperactivity, especially when an individual drinks alcohol, as well as the Cdh13 genes being linked to substance abuse. Also important, The Cdh13 gene variant lowers impulse control. So let's recap. The MAOA variant's low activity causes neurotransmitters to stick around for longer than they're needed, which causes problems with things like impulse control and mood. When there are outside stressors, such as abuse, this variant can cause mostly males problems with aggression and put them at a higher risk for disorders like ASPD. The Cdh13 gene variant can also cause impulse control issues as well as depression and issues with substance abuse and aggression. Women normally don't experience issues with aggression when they have this variant because they have the other X chromosome, and when they do have this same gene variant, it can cause them to be happier. In conclusion, this gene does not create serial killers in the way that Betty is worried about and in the way that Riverdale depicts. It messes with impulse control and mood. It doesn't cause you to sit down and plan a bunch of murders. It's more likely that something pisses you off and so you fight. Does that make sense? Betty, Alice, and even Polly all act like having this gene variant is a death sentence, and Betty is terrified that she's going to become a serial killer like her dad and Charles because of this, but that's just not how it works. If Betty takes after her dad and becomes a serial killer, it's more likely due to nurture rather than nature. I mean, he literally was grooming her to be a killer, even though they really try to push the idea that this gene variant has that much power. Oh yeah, and Charles says he joined the FBI to help with his urges, as in his urges to kill people. Is that really how that works?
I have the genes too. In fact, it's why I joined the FBI, to control those impulses.
Another ridiculous thing from earlier this season is when somehow this gene variant causes Betty to be able to pick out serial killers just by sensing it.
Any guesses on which one of these men is the murderer?
It's the third man.
That's correct, Betty. How did you know that?
I don't know. Just intuition. Because I'm like them. I have the same genes as them.
Dude, gene variants or not, do not cause telepathic connections with other people with the same variant. That's just not how it works. She literally quits because she's like them, and that's how she could identify all the serial killers on the slides. She says, because I'm like them, I have the same genes as them. Betty, that's not how that works. The gene mutation you have should be making you happier, not magical. And if you wanted to say, oh, this universe isn't the real one and claim that that's how it works, oh gosh, they literally did with Betty's aura reading. I forgot about that, oh my gosh. I don't even know if we should get into her evil twin nephew and niece, or how the gene variants gave her a blind spot, or I guess they don't anymore. Okay, it's been a second since I wrote this, and guess what? Polly actually cured Betty of the gene variants by washing her feet. I can't do this anymore. So, this plot is stupid because A, everybody has the MAOA and Cdh13 genes. What they're talking about are gene variants, but they never actually specify that. B, Betty is a female, so this should be making her happier. C, these genes don't cause first-degree serial killers, just problems with impulse control and aggression when there are outside stressors. That's not, okay, hold on, maybe I should say, that's not to say that, like, no serial killer has this, and, you know, maybe, like, if a serial killer had it, it would, you know, affect them, but what I'm saying is these genes do not cause you to be a first-degree serial killer. I say first degree because I'm talking about murder. These do not cause you to sit down and plan a murder, you know what I mean? Okay, anyway, D, these variants aren't magical and automatically connect you to every other person with the same gene variant, and E, I mean, I guess I just said this, but you choose to become a serial killer. It's not your blood, it's not your genes, it's a choice. Okay, I think that's all for today. This has been a weird one. Let me know your thoughts on the gene variants and Betty's weird magical serial killer sensing powers. Also, if anything is incorrect in this, sorry. Again, I'm not naturally a science person. I just found it interesting and wanted to, you know, research, but my brain isn't really equipped for this kind of thing. Anyway, if you've made it this far, wow, thank you for watching. I will see y'all later.